we live?
Hi.
I think we're there. We've lost our facilitator for just a minute. We are working with Jenna to get her. We've got a little bit of a technical issue, so hopefully Jenna will be joining us in just a moment, but we're going to go ahead and get started. I am excited and nervous about this topic. It's one that I was just telling the panelists, I could probably rant about Mother's Day for an hour, the reasons I love and hate the topic. So this should be fun. This is a little bit different than some of the events that we do in that what I'm hoping to get from it is other people's perspectives, a lot of feelings, what we have about it, so that we can start to build community around you're not alone in whatever way you feel towards this day. That's the hope for today. We do this series. We're Inclusive Agile. We provide consulting for companies to teach them Agile frameworks. So that's how do you break down your work? And how do you do that in a way that has diversity built right into the framework? So we approach it a little bit differently than most consulting companies and most Agile companies do. We believe that the whole organization needs to be involved with better practices and processes. Diversity is not an HR problem, it's a whole team solution. So that's why we exist. And if you'd like to learn more about us, we are at inclusiveagile.io, or you can reach out to me or anyone on the team here on LinkedIn. This will also stream to YouTube and Facebook, by the way. I don't know if both of you got that memo yet. Oh, yay, we're getting Jenna. This is going to work. It's going to be good. Okay, so in this series that we do, Inclusive Agile Presents. As a company, we are a registered nonprofit, and we are working towards our 501c3 status, hopefully submitting real soon. This is a big process, y'all. I'm sure some of you've done this. And part of our mission is to raise awareness about the issues that make it hard for people to show up, so that we can raise empathy in the workplace, so that people understand more about the humans that are driving your business. The better you can help your humans show up and feel safe and included and like they belong while they're doing their work, the better outcomes you're going to have for your business and for the individual people on your team. They're just going to have a better experience of their world. So this series is to raise awareness around those topics, to elevate the voices of people who are out here doing the work. That's why we've got Sheva and we've got Kimberly on. We're super excited. Later this month, we're going to have a one-on-one chat with each of these women about deeper dives into the work that they do. And today, we're going to focus on Mother's Day. Today, we're going to focus on what makes Mother's Day great, what makes it difficult, some things that might get in the way, in hopes that we can build community, spread empathy, and support the women in our businesses, support all of the women in our businesses, whether or not they have kids. This is meant for all women identifying humans, all mom identifying humans. I guess genderless, really, and we'll get into that a little bit. It's part of my story. We'll get into that, like what I really mean by that. Like all mom identifying humans are included in this. It's not just for people who have, born children or who are raising children. So, all right, we are going to. We have Jenna's face. We have Jenna's face.
Hello, finally.
No voice yet.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
No voice yet?
Yes. No, we can hear you. We can hear you. You're a little delayed, but
you can hear me. Oh, okay. Okay. Whew.
I think it'll catch up. Great.
Thank you.
Awesome. So real quick, I should have said this at the beginning. I'm Corissa. I pronounce her she, her. And I'm the executive director at Inclusive Agile. I've spent most of my life in tech. I've been full-time breadwinner for my entire career and have 4 kids. 2 who are my natural born and 2 who are bonus stepchildren who I've gotten to acquire 14 years ago. So that's me. I'm gonna let the rest of the panelists do a quick intro, and then we will get going. We'll start with Sheva.
Yeah, totally. Just unmuting myself. Hi, everybody. My name is Sheva Guy. My pronouns are she, her. I currently am a consultant at Huron, a change management consultant, and I also do diversity and inclusion consulting. I've got 3 kids. Two, I've got the pictures here. They're always here. I've got Anthony and Jonathan, who are 9 and 10. We adopted them when they were 5 and 6 from the foster care system. And then we have a biological daughter, Finley, who turned 3 the day after Christmas. So, yeah.
All right, Jenna, go ahead. I'm going clockwise. You guys probably
Yeah.
saw that, but
No, that's great. My name is Jenna Gray. I joined Inclusive Agile recently to kind of jump on and help with some things that I'm able to help with, but I've been a stay-at-home mom for the past 10 years with 3 kids. And so, yeah, that's me.
awesome. Kimberly.
Hi, my name is Kimberly Reyes, and I am a mom to a 3-year-old who you may or may not hear in the background during this episode because I am also a stay-at-home mom, and it's just us rocking through it all. So, thank you for having me.
Could you intro what you do, your company, real quick?
Certainly, yeah. I am the founder of a company called All the Unexpected, and we are an organization that focuses on helping parents through everything that is unexpected in the journey of parenthood. And it started when my daughter was born at 26 weeks, and we spent 109 days in the NICU, and the journey from there to the age of 3 now. And so we do a lot of podcasting and documentaries and stuff for parents.
Thank you. All right. Okay, let's get into our topic. And I'm going to start out with just why do you love Mother's Day? Do you hate it? Why or why not? And I'm going to somebody just decide who wants to go first. And then I think we're all being kind of who wants to go? But just raise your hand or jump in. Let's just do this.
Oh, I'll go. It'll be like the Quakers when the spirit moves you, right?
Yes.
And so I think it's a very interesting thing, and I've always loved it. I'm a big holiday person, and no excuse for a card and a cake and a party, and I think it's an interesting thing, and sort of in my own journey though, it's been very interesting, and so I think my first Mother's Day was very different than I had pictured. And I think one of the things surrounding the holidays tends to be that we've got so many expectations for them and so much of the sort of hallmark perfection that surrounds it, right? That when it looks very different, it can be really hard. And so I think it's this sort of fluid relationship in the sense that you've got to make of it what it is to you, right? And so I think that was the journey for me, and just very quickly, the first Mother's Day, my daughter was still in the hospital. She was about 49 days old. I've done an episode on this, so I know the numbers. And I had yet to held her. So she was 57 days old before I held her for the first time because she was intubated. And I actually just saw the picture. It came up in my memories today. She was so small she couldn't wear clothes still. And someone had sent me a My First Mother's Day onesie. And there's a picture of it just laid on top of the incubator because she couldn't wear the onesie and we couldn't do it that way. And I had yet to ever hold her. And I just remember saying, this is not how we pictured first Mother's Day, right? And so it's become something that I've had to make of it in my own vision and separate it from the ideal of what people imagine it to be, right?
Absolutely.
I feel like oh, go ahead.
I'm going to call on you guys. If
I was going to say I'll go. I have a very love-hate relationship with Mother's Day. Now it's a little bit different, but I had an abortion at 23 weeks in 2015 due to a genetic anomaly, and ever since then, Mother's Day has been really hard. It's been hard, right? Because then we struggled with infertility, and every Mother's Day I was like, I'm not good enough. I am not a mom and I want to be a mom. And I just felt that way wholeheartedly. And so my first Mother's Day was 2020, and it was not too long after the shit hit the fan, and we were fostering my 2 sons, and I had my daughter not too long before that, and I was like, "Oh my god, like, is this what the hype is about?" Like, I have 3 children, and now I have to deal with this on Mother's Day, and then like, a couple years after, I was like, "We're gonna go all out, we're gonna all hang out," and I was like, "I'm exhausted from trying to plan a Mother's Day for myself." So I decided this year I wanna do I'm rescheduling my Mother's Day because we have lacrosse games all day, but I'm having a Mother's Day where everyone's gone. I wanna just, like, I want my Mother's Day to be not being a mom. Like, I realize that's what I
That's
need.
what I want. Yeah.
100%. So I've always had, like, it's either been heartbreaking or overwhelming. So I think I'm at the point where I'm like, I just want to do nothing for Mother's Day, and I think then I will embrace it. But I do recognize every Mother's Day that Mother's Day is a really hard day for a lot of people. And I understand, like, folks that need to, like, cut out social media for the day or just not celebrate, and that's totally fine. So yeah, definitely mixed emotions for me about Mother's Day, 100%.
I feel the same way. Absolutely. It's kind of hard because I feel like it's become so, like, of course, I want to celebrate my mom and, the mother, but at the same time, very obligatory now, like that you have to, or that you should feel like I feel guilty if I don't feel like I'm doing enough, and my mom's great and is always like, oh, it's fine. But I do feel like there's a lot of pressure now. It was interesting because I was reading about the woman who created it, Anna Jarvis, and she actually spent the rest of her life trying to get rid of the day because she thought it had become too commercialized. And so it's hard. Like, it's nice being appreciated. It's nice having your family go out of their way to treat you well, and but at the same time, like, I don't want it to feel like it's something that has to be done. And I much more appreciate that my family takes care of me throughout the year, right? Like, every day is kind of, yeah, how I like it. And so it's just like, I don't know, it's just another day almost. That's nice. I definitely appreciate, but it's complicated.
Yeah, it's complicated for sure. I made a comment at the beginning, something about mom identifying persons, and I was raised most of my life by my dad. So my dad got custody when I was 9, 8.5, 9, somewhere in there. And my mom was not super present, but I still felt like I was supposed to honor her on this day. And she didn't push it, right? But it felt like an obligation. It felt like a thing. Like, oh yeah, everybody's talking about how much they love their moms and all these things that their moms do for them. And I'm like, I saw mine 6 months ago. Like, that's about it. So that was hard, right? So sometimes we would do stuff for my dad. My husband was a single father and had full custody of his boys for about a year, 2 years before we got married. And so that was a little hard for him too, right? Because he was filling in that kind of that spot as well. After having kids, I just love being a mom. I super love being a mom. I love most of the things about being a mom. So Mother's Day got to be a little bit better, but it felt like work, like what Sheva was saying. Like, it felt like work, because it doesn't anymore. My husband Darren is amazing and makes it magical. He makes all holidays magical. But my first husband, it's just another day. So it felt like there was an expectation and then there was a miss, right? So I love it and hate it. And my boys who are with us full time are gone on Mother's Day, right? So, like, they go to their bio moms on Mother's Day. So that's a little bit difficult on Mother's Day. I feel like I'm just dumping now a little bit. But
I mean,
right, like, there's just stuff, right? There's a little
yeah.
stuff around it. And I don't want to complain about it. Right? Like, I don't want to complain about it, but I also don't want to, like, not complain about it because I'm very grateful. I'm very grateful for my kids. I'm grateful for the bonus kids. I'm grateful for all of it. And I worry that I sound like I'm complaining when I'm like, Mother's Day. So that's where I'm at with that. And this year, my mom and I like stopped talking to my mom. This is the first year where I'm like no contact with my bio mom. So yeah. So it's a little bit extra. I've been trying to pretend it doesn't exist. I think the plan right now is my sisters and I are just going to go get dinner or something. One of my baby sister still to this day sends me Mother's Day presents because like she's sufficiently younger that I was like partially raising her. So like there's a lot of stuff here. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to stop talking. Dee just put an interesting question, and I think this might be a fun one to move into right now in the chat. So how would you recommend companies create space for the complicated and complex feelings around Mother's Day for their employees, for their customers? Yeah. Who wants to weigh in on that?
I'll say something. I think I like to use the phrase hold space a lot, right? And so I think a lot of the work that I do, and even sort of our name, right? Like it came from the idea of the what to expect when you're expecting, right? That's where it happened. And so yeah, it came from that idea of saying, oh, so at 12 weeks you're a cantaloupe and and all these like, ridiculous things that were so prescribed, and the what to expect is so formulated and so normal, right? And so all the unexpected is like what happens when all of that prescribed goes out the window, right? And so I sort of ruminate on that topic a lot in the work that I do. And I think part of holding space, right, for such a diversity of experience comes from the idea that it's not going to look the same for everyone. It's not going to feel the same for everyone, right? So that maybe just making something optional, right? And so I've, spent the last 20 years working all around the world for every type of thing from, corporate 400 to small family schools and everything in between. And one of the things that has kind of always been the case is that celebrations are often very obligatory in companies, right? So like everybody come to the party, everybody do this. And what like what happens when it's just not what the person wants to be, or and you I had a school one time that made the Christmas party obligatory and we weren't going to get the 2 days off after New Year's. And yeah. And I was sick and like 16 weeks pregnant and miserable and just wanted to go home because like I couldn't even stay awake. And yeah, I mean, we could go on forever. But it's one of those moments where it's just, like giving someone the out or giving someone the option, or or just saying like at the beginning of the year, what if you did a thing where you were like, can we tick off the emails you want to be opted out from or something, or like just really small things to just like say, I'm going to hold space for that person to just not have to participate, but also not suffer the penalty of not participating, right? Because there's often that penalty. Oh, you didn't come to the party? Well, I guess you missed the raffle, or you didn't go to the golfing thing. Well, no deal for you, right? So sort of holding space for people to step back and to do so without a penalty, right?
I love that.
Absolutely.
Who else?
I feel like I instinctively just ignore Mother's Day stuff from work. I don't know if it's like because of like what went on in my past or whatever. I just ignore it. And I feel like I don't know, I've been on like email listservs, I think to Kimberly's point, where it's like, your baby's this month's old, your baby's this month's old. And I was like, I never had that baby. So it's like always been a very like very like strange like feeling for me. And so I love the idea of opting out of emails 100%. I feel like I'm not saying that Mother's Day and Father's Day and everything, Parents' Day it's not, I'm not saying it's not important, but I feel like, is it something that companies really need to address? I don't even know if it's something that companies really need to necessarily address. Like I would be fine if it just for me, it feels like a Hallmark holiday almost. Like if it wasn't a dress, I'd be cool with it. Like I almost like I still get that pang from my past when I see like Mother's Day panel or Mother's Day this Mother's Day like event, you know. And so I'm like I'd rather just like ignore it and have it not be there. And that might be a controversial opinion, but for me, it's like I couldn't care less at that. Like I would rather it just not exist. So I feel like the best way to be as inclusive as possible is either to open it up to all kinds of parents all the time or just say we're not doing this. So I don't know.
Yeah. No, I like that too.
Was it D? I think D is the one who shared it. That one of our vendors, I think it was maybe Canva. Was it Canva, D? That sent a thing and said, "Hey, do you want to be opted out of this?" And it was
it was Canva, I believe.
Yeah, it was really lovely. I was going to see if I could find that picture.
Which is nice.
Yeah, so that's
that they give you the option. Mm-hmm. Because not everybody wants that.
But it is tricky, like Kimberly was saying, right? Yeah. Like how do you give people space and hold that space for them and help them not feel excluded? Right. So we have a couple of good comments here in the chat that I want to read. And so we've got one from Maria. I don't know if it's Maria Alexandra or Maria, so I'm just going to say both. Maria Alexandra, is it Sadim? I work for a very large company and we've never celebrated Mother's Day. Not sure if it's that way for the other Mother's Day. I don't know if I've ever seen it celebrated, but I have seen it marked, right? Recognized. And I think that I'm going to bring this up, although it might be a little touchy. I think churches also generally make a big deal out of Mother's Day and somewhat a deal out of Father's Day as well. And that always felt very awkward in church situations. When they, would ask out all the moms to stand up or whatever, and some of the people didn't know if they should stand up or not, kind of a thing. So that's difficult. Yeah. So also Chantel Rhodes in the comments said that it talks about giving myself permission to create space I need and communicate my needs and wants around the space. And my experience is really empowering. I love that because that puts the pressure, or not the pressure, it removes the pressure from the individuals. And it even removes it a little bit from the systems and puts it more on the culture. Does the culture support you? Whether it's some random thing that nobody else has thought of. Perhaps no one in your company has been Muslim in the past, and now there's someone who celebrates Ramadan, and nobody has ever thought to ask about that in the past. But if there's a good enough culture where people feel safe to be able to bring these things up and to talk to someone about it, then you could still catch and leave space and hold space for some of these things that haven't been thought about yet. Because there's always going to be more things that have not made it onto somebody's calendar yet. So,
yeah, I think that's an interesting point though, right? So, it's saying there should be a space where people feel comfortable to bring it up. But the question is, should that impetus be on the person to have to do that, right? Because I think there's this moment of people just sort of being naturally, hesitant to make waves, right? And to say like, oh, I'm not going to be the only one to see something, right? I'm not going to be the only one to do that. And being able, to, as I think management, right, and structure, and those at the sort of top of the structure, to recognize the need to do that, right? And so I think there's a balance there, right? Because I think there's a natural sort of human tendency in general, regardless, to just kind of like, I'm going to keep my head down and not make waves and not do that, right? And so if you're putting all of the onus on the person to say, well, hi, I'm here and I don't want to do this, or I need this space, or I need that kind of accommodation, or whatever it is, then there's a lot of pressure on someone who there's already a lot of pressure on, right? So I think that's part of it too, is that just, and this is why you have like HR, right? It's supposed to be human resources. I think one of the largest misnomers in the world, right? But, like this is, I mean, but, like this is the point, right? So you're supposed to sort of be this like human component to an otherwise like humanless corporate function, right? And so being able
Yeah.
to say, okay, well, as management, what are we doing, for our employees without them having to ask? I think there's space to like think about that aspect, right?
I love that.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely, for sure. Okay, I want to move on to another one of another thought or topic. What do you think? What advice would you give to companies about working moms? About support that moms need or don't need? What things have you seen be good or not good? Or what are some of the challenges that you see that come up for working moms that maybe people never think about?
Yeah.
I would say like flexibility
I'll go.
100%.
Oh,
Oh, no. Oh, I'm sorry. Do you want to go?
yep. No,
I was
absolutely.
gonna
No,
say
go ahead.
flexibility 100% because like so I'm in a like at home, so I work full time and I've got some like side gigs and stuff. My husband is a stay-at-home dad. So you would think like, oh, she can work like 9 to 7, whatever, blah 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 blah. But like honestly, like with 3 kids, like if I've got one of them that's got a doctor's appointment, can we bring with COVID, like they won't even let you bring the other 2 even if I wanted to, and I don't want to. So there's like so much juggling of the schedules that honestly I would just say I would want a culture where I don't feel guilty about taking a call when I'm in line at the pharmacy or taking a call video off while my child is in therapy and I am in the waiting room. I just think the biggest thing is just flexibility. Like I work 100% remote. I do travel occasionally, but I feel like I'm at a company where they understand like I can't travel the week that my kid starts school in August. I can't travel the week that my kid has a lacrosse tournament and they're chill about it. And as long as there's that flexibility and understanding, I think that's the biggest thing. And it should be easy. It should be pretty simple to understand, but somehow it's not. Like when someone says I need a call at 5 o'clock, I'm like, that's awesome. I'll be in the car driving my kids to Code Ninjas or lacrosse or whatever. So I just think for me, it's 100% just flexibility and trusting me to do my job, whether it's in a waiting room or at lacrosse practice, whatever. I mean, I'm not saying like I need to be working all the time, but if it's a meeting or something that I have to be at that's during a time where I'm not at my desk, just trust me to be where I need to be to do my work. And I think trust and flexibility are the two biggest things for me.
I would agree with that 100%. Because being a parent is so unpredictable. And you can't plan everything. And if you have these rigid structures in place, it makes it really hard. I mean, my mom, I think she works at a job that she really doesn't like, but she has flexibility. She can leave when she wants. She can, like take time off whenever she needs to. And I feel like that is that important to her, that she'll put up with this job so that she can have that flexibility because she has to do it as a parent, right? And so it is. You have to be flexible and you have to absolutely trust. I'm gonna pile onto that because I feel like moms, like, we'll get the job done, whether we do it at, between 9 to 5 or whether we, like we want to work and we want to be successful and help our companies. But yeah, I feel like there's not a lot of trust there when you're a parent, when you're a mother.
That sucks though that she has to have a job that she doesn't like, but keeps it because of flexibility. Like I've been there.
I agree.
I've been there. Like I've had a job I loved, but I didn't have flexibility, so I couldn't do it. Like, why can't it be both? You know?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Why can't we have a system where, you trust women and mothers to have that flexibility and be able to make their own time and work when they can. And, unless you're having an issue where things aren't getting done or, and you can do that case by case, like, I just think, it's a little bit, it's just too bad.
It feels like you hired me, but you don't trust me to do my job.
Yeah,
why did you hire me? Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So
what do you
frustrating.
think, Kimberly? Has this been a thing for you as well?
Well, I mean, I think that's the real question here, right? So if you're the employer, what's your goal? Is your goal to, be a junior high school principal and make sure that like I've got a tardy slip if the train was late, right? Or, are you trying to reach whatever Q1 goal you're trying to do and get, whatever, like, so it's like, I think that's the question you have to ask yourself, right? And so you have all it's a raging debate right now with the whole return to office thing and people, going back and forth. And the question is like, as a company, what is your goal? So like, if you're selling stuff, are you selling more of that stuff? Is it happening? Cool. Why are you really concerned with why it's happening, or how it's happening, right? Like, it's like at the end of the day, there's a moment of saying like, let's really just kind of reprioritize what matters. So does it matter that like, you've got Big Brother eye in this guy and watching the whole office all day and clocking everyone in and out, and especially if you're paying someone on salary, because you're not paying them hourly, right? So like if it's a different story. Let's say that someone's, and a lot of people do work jobs where you get paid hourly, and that's, a different story. You do have to clock in and clock out because that's how someone, is paying you. But if that's not the case, and most corporate jobs that isn't the case, right? So what's your overall goal, and how do you give your team everything they need to reach that goal, right? That should be the only line of thought, not this kind of need for control that I think it rises in so many situations, because that's really what it is, right? It's just this like need for control for the sake of having control, right?
Absolutely agree. And something you said there, Kimberly, I wonder if you could expand on a little bit. And I know this affects men as well as women. Dads and moms are all affected by the forced back to office. I'm wondering if you, Kimberly, could speak to whether or not you think that this affects this this feeling of pulling people back into office affects women more.
I mean, I think so, because if you look at all of these studies that have come out recently, right, and they're saying like even if both parents are working full time, that because of traditional gender roles and all of the various, variables, women are still doing what 70-80% of like household work and household tasks. Like that's just what it is in general. There are exceptions. There are, like amazing stories. I have friends whose husbands cook. I'm like, wow, like, but it's just like, mine would love to try, but I'm a picky eater, and I'm just like, I'm good, and so, at the end of the day, right, it's, if you think about how household labor is just divided by the nature of who the default parent tends to be, right, all of these sort of things, yeah, women are by and large more affected by this because of the roles that they play in the home, right? And it's such an individual basis, but at the same time, right, like it is what it is, right? So it's like we could say we want to change the whole world. Great, that's a wonderful and beautiful lofty goal, but here we are right now in the present, and this is the present state of affairs. And the state of affairs is that women will do an extra 20 to 30 hours a week of work, because running a home is work, right? On top of it. So yes, like by and large, they are definitely going to be more affected by this, right?
Yeah. Sheva or Jenna, did you want to weigh in on that?
The default parent thing like 100% gets me, because like, again, my husband's a stay-at-home dad. Do I do the laundry?
Same.
Mm-mm. Do I do the dishes? Mm-mm. Should I? Probably. But I'm still I'm the default parent still. Like, I'm still the one that's, it's like, mom. And I'm like, mom's in a meeting. Dad is there. But it's always mom. It's like mom, 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 mom. Always. When I get stuff from school, it's like, did you sign, like, are you the, who wants to be the mom, like the team mom? Who wants to be like the parent mom? And I'm like that. There's so many issues with that. And like, I always call it out. But like, I feel like I'm still the default parent regardless. And that's just how my kids somehow, like, they see the world that way, because of how, like, there's only so much I can control in the home, right? There's only so much I can control about that narrative in the home, where outside of the home, they see it completely the opposite than what's going on here. So yeah, there's definitely that. And the mental load, I think, still, regardless if you're in a heterosexual relationship and there's a dad and a mom, like, I'm shouldering that mental load. And I like, my husband and I have talked about this, like, we acknowledge it. Like, I know I do. And I know my kids see me as the default parent, but it's like, even when we're trying to challenge those gender roles, it's still pervasive. It's still pervasive and it's still prevalent. And I don't know. It's a wicked problem. I don't even know where to begin, because even though I teach my kids the opposite, what do they hear at school? Like, what do they hear everywhere else? You know, I can't control that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thoughts on that, Jenna?
Oh yeah, I feel the same way. It's absolutely, I feel like a societal type problem, because yeah, where do you start? It is that, like, how do you start to like unravel or change, or, you know, you can do what you can, like you said, in your space, but you don't have control over everything your kids see and, you know, their perceptions of things. And so it is really difficult to try to change that in their minds, or even
Yeah.
in, you know, our minds. Like, we all grew up with that to a certain extent, I would imagine, you know. And so it's just hard when it's not the norm, right?
Yeah. I actually think Sylvia Morales has a comment that I think starts to get to the heart of the wicked problem. And she says, what happens when an employer gives flexibility to mothers? And what about the others who aren't mothers? Will there be resentment from them? And companies don't want to deal with that. That's the exact right point. It's not just about giving flexibility to moms. It's about learning to treat all of your employees, all of the humans who show up and work with you, as people who have complex lives and that need flexibility. Give everyone the same flexibility. Employers, you don't need to single out and figure out who's got the kids and who doesn't, and who's the stay-at-home mom or dad, or who's got the more high-powered job in the couple, or like, that's none of the employer's business. They should give that flexibility to everyone, while highlighting, as a society, us trying to dismantle these systems that disproportionately affect women and in other marginalized groups. Like, that's work we all have to do. But this benefit of flexibility helps everyone.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Thank you, Sylvia.
Agreed.
Like, that's the right question.
Yeah, and also, I mean, so there's an interesting sort of nuance to that too, because that delves into that equality equity debate, right? Because at the end of the day, right, we're saying, yes, the idea of trusting everyone to do their work, right? Saying that everyone might have a situation where they need to leave earlier, they need to do whatever the thing is. At the same time, I think you do have to recognize that there is an extra burden, right? Because that's where the equity comes in, because we're saying, okay, and that's part of the discussion in general, right? So much pushback, because let's be real, there is a lot of pushback against equity in general, right? Because they're saying, well, why are you giving that person the leg up? Well, why are you giving, and you're like, well, 400 years of historical marginalization, but let's not mince words, right? Like, it's but so at the end of the day, right, there has to be some sort of recognition, in the sense of saying, right, like, this person's shouldering another burden, and so it's like, I love the idea of everyone saying, oh, well, like, my pets are my children. Great, I love that you feel that way. We all love animals, but they'd call CPS if I put my kid in a kennel for the day, right? Like, we couldn't, like, there's a reality
it's
of
different.
it is,
I wish sometimes, but yeah.
I mean, yeah, at the end of the day, I'm like, there's one of those places you can drop them off and like come back on Monday and like they just give them a bowl of food. That sounds kind of cool, but I think somebody would have an issue with it, right? So it's like, we have to be able to respect, like, the nuance of humanity and the nuance of situations, right? And so when you hear people say that they went on maternity leave and someone's like, have a nice vacation, it's like, I think you're misunderstanding this whole, like, birthing a human thing.
Yeah, not a vacation.
Yeah, like, and so I think that's that part too. And so there's a way, I think, to build that trust, build that flexibility for everyone, because like, life is full of gray, right? Nothing is black and white, but at the same time also say, we are cognizant of someone shouldering an extra burden right now, because that is reality, right? That is parenthood, that is taking care of a small human, whichever label you do it under, right?
Yeah, thank you so much, because definitely, I didn't mean to imply that like those are the same things. Thank you for bringing that vocabulary of equality and equity into the conversation, because that is the point. Are there other ways that you think that shows up, especially for someone with that maybe preemie, is somebody who's had an unexpected journey? What are some ways where equal is not good enough? Like equality is not good enough for parents.
Well, that's the thing. I think I think Jenny, you were saying like case by case, right? That once again, this whole, like HR thing, right? And so the idea is that you've got this section that's supposed to be looking at each person, as an individual, dealing with the circumstance that they're dealing with, and making an adjustment and a decision based on this individual case, right? I was a teacher for 15 years before my daughter was born. And one of the things that everyone's like, well, if you do it for one student, you have to do it for everybody. And it's like, well, no, actually, no. Like, no, like you don't, right? That's just not how it works, right? And so I've always had such a pushback against that philosophy, because I'm like, no, because you know what? Like, that kid over there just took the bus from a homeless shelter this morning. So like me giving him an extra box of crayons to take home today because like the other ones went missing and I'm not going to ask why or how, like, is what's happening right now. And the next person complaining about it, not only is it not your business to know why that's happening, but you're going to accept that, right? And so that's, to me, like having that, it belongs in the case by case, because none of us are robots. None of us, is in a machine, right? Let's just treat people with humanity, I think is kind of the bottom line here, right?
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for bringing up those extra points. The Sylvia had mentioned again that, employers don't treat people, don't give other people the kind of flexibility. Sometimes I'm not sure where that comes. Sylvia, if you want to give some more comment or some more color around like what you're seeing there, because you're right. I think in our race to help some people, we don't really look at the problem holistically, and how do we actually treat individuals with their individual needs, rather than making blanket statements based on what we can see or what we think is going on. So that's where we're trying to go with that. It's absolutely like, I'm going to give moms flexibility. Well, my husband was, single dad. My dad, single dad with 5 kids. When my dad got custody, he had a full-time job and a side hustle, and he had 5 kids between the ages of 10 and 2. And yeah, his experience of fatherhood would not have mirrored anyone that he worked with at the time, right? Like, it was very different, and he could have used different kinds of support than people just. I don't actually know how would or would not have been offered, but if people were trying to be, let's give all moms flexibility, he would have gotten left out. Or if we had said, let's give all people the same kind of flexibility, still wouldn't have worked, right? Like it would have had to be very individual. So, yeah, thank you. Do we have any other questions in the chat before I move to a different one? I'm kind of peppering these through. Oh, yeah. That's the Corissa forgets to take her medicine alarm.
That's fine. I just got an alarm that my kid has book club tonight, so.
Yeah, so I actually, I'm going to turn my camera off for half a second and let you guys answer. What do you think is the infertility and loss? This is a kind of a touchy thing, and often companies don't even know. Should they know? Should you tell your employer? How should they support people who are going through that? And I'm going to turn off for just half a second.
I don't know, maybe Sheva, yeah, I mean,
yes, I can speak to it. So when I suffered, like, I consider it a loss, even though it was a voluntary abortion, but incompatible with life, and and this was when somehow in 2015, when abortion laws were in Ohio easier to do it, I had to go to Chicago, and it's interesting. So it was my first year ever teaching undergraduates. I was adjuncting, and I didn't know what I was doing. And I just had to be like, I guess I have to cancel class. And it was my first year in my doctoral program. And my advisors were so incredibly supportive. I took a lot of time off. But thinking back, I wonder, like currently I'm at a place where I have flexible unlimited PTO. But if I was at a place where it wasn't like that, I wonder if I would have had to, like, would I have had to go back to work immediately? Probably. Like, I had to get up and it was like, I have to go to Chicago because of the laws. I can't do it here. So I had to go to Chicago, which is like 4.5 hours away. And I was like trying to make lesson plans while I was doing, like, I didn't know. And thinking back, going back to flexibility for like parents compared, like, I feel like it should be no question. It should be, I need to take this time off. I've always met my deliverables. I've always done what I need to do. I need to take this time off. If you're comfortable telling your supervisor, great. If you're not, you shouldn't have to. There should be zero justification. If I say I have to take a sick day or I have to take time off, that means I have to take time off. Does it mean I'm fucking around? Maybe. Does it mean I'm doing what, like, things that I need to do? Maybe. But it shouldn't matter. If I get my job done, it should not matter why. If I'm comfortable telling my employer, like, this is what I'm going through, that's great. But at the time when I did tell people what I was going through, they were like, don't talk about it. Just take time. Just don't talk about it. Just take it. And there was this very like, why are you telling me? Just take it. And I was like, okay. So I feel like I got this message that I had to hide, like, what I needed to do if I had to take time off. But I feel like with like infertility, I've heard from very close friends too, like horror stories of, you can't take time off because this doesn't fall under FMLA, or you can't take time off because of this or that. Whereas people that are going through infertility and going through treatments, like, we know, we might hear from our doctor, tomorrow's the day. You got to get in. Tomorrow's the day. Like, we have to, like, you're ovulating. We got to get it happens on the flip of a hat. And if you don't have an employer that's flexible, regardless of if you're trying to have kids, if you have kids, if you're a mom, if you're not, whatever, there needs to be that flexibility of, you've always done your job. You've done a great job. Why do you have, I shouldn't have to request time off. I should be able to say, like, I understand, I'm trusting my judgment and being able to do that. So I think that was one thing. Like, now I'm finally understanding, being in a place where I have flexible unlimited PTO, that I'm not as anxious about it. But for a long time, I was scared to tell the truth about why I was taking PTO. I was afraid because I was afraid that it wasn't a justifiable reason.
Yeah, so when I was probably, I guess, about 8 or 9 weeks pregnant, I had like a medical issue and had to go on bed rest with my daughter for a week. And so I remember having to go back to work and, was probably like 10 or 11 weeks pregnant, and you kind of aren't telling anybody then, right? But I, at that point, obligatorily had to tell my employer, right? And I was working in a school, and it's everyone always says kind of like, oh, well, it's only in corporate America. And I'm saying some of the craziest things that happened to me were like working in a school that, everybody's dealing with children for people who were mothers, right? And it still just didn't matter. And I remember kind of having this moment of not only having to justify why I had to take a week off, I had surpassed my PTO that I acquired at like 1 hour per week for the whole year, whatever, ridiculous math it is. So it was just getting docked for like every day I was out, and then had to reduce some of the responsibilities that weren't even related to teaching. They were things like corralling children to a bus up 4 flights of stairs, and things that just like were too much to do. And at every turn had to produce a doctor's note for each thing to prove that I wasn't lying about like having been on bed rest, and just the complete lack of trust and having to sort of justify that. And I think that's the thing. It's like, let's think about what people are going through, whether it's a loss, whether it's a medical issue, whether it is just, that window the doctor calls you and it's like, your basal temperature's right, it's time to go, whatever it is, right? Like, and hold space that maybe someone shouldn't have to talk about why they're not there, right? And so I've seen it over the years in many different places. And, I think that's a huge thing. And so I remember just being like, okay, cool. I guess I have to like tell everybody now. And I guess like I have to justify like not being able to stand up, and like all of these sort of things. Right. And so, yeah, it's just, and then they kept saying, well, you're not going to get paid for today. And I'm like, oh, cool. Well, I'm still going to lie in bed here today. And, it's free. And, it's like my husband's raging and he goes, well, I'll just work more. We're having this whole like, discussion about like trying to do what you have to do. But it's like, life is hard enough and people are dealing with what they're dealing with. Are you seriously sitting here trying to make it harder? Right. And that's really the question to ask. Like, are you doing the best to like help someone in life, right, in general? And if you could help make someone's day or their life or their week just a little bit easier, why are you doing the opposite?
I mean, and honestly, it's good for business. Like, I'm not trying to reduce this to dollars and cents, but people will say stuff like, well, we're running a business here. And I'm like, are you? Okay, so do you want to retrain somebody because you just lost this employee because you didn't treat them well when they were sick? Do you want to deal with the reduced productivity of everyone else on their team as they are dealing with the trauma of watching their teammate not be taken care of and the stress that they have on them the next time they need something done? Or people who are sick and working anyways in that extremely reduced capacity, accuracy, safety, all of that. If you really care about your bottom line, you care about the humans that are doing the work. Like, you want to be good at business,
100%.
you want to make money, you care about the humans doing the work. You don't treat them like robots. Yeah, did we have any other thoughts on that? Because I want to go to a really neat comment that we just got in the chat.
Right.
Okay. From Latoya. Hello, Latoya, one of my favorite human beings. Met Latoya this year. I'm hoping the new job is going well. This, like, seriously, if you're not friends with Latoya, you're missing out. Amazing human being. Go be friends with Latoya. The default parent is generational. I hadn't thought about this, Latoya. Thank you so much for saying it. We learned this dynamic from our mothers. It's actually a cycle of abuse to have that disproportionate workload on one person. Equity is the right direction for sure. For transformation and healing on this topic. And I can't see the bottom part of it. Double standards are part of the conversation around gender equity. Comments from my panel on that thought.
Yeah, I remember the classic thing where they say, like, you see a mom like holding 3 kids at the store and like pushing the thing and doing all this stuff, and you're like, okay, momming. And you see like a dad, and you're like, where's his cape? Where's the, like, where can we give him an award? Can we
Super
do
dad.
right? Yeah. And so just even that we kind of hold those differences, or like the dad's like babysitting. It's like, really though? Is that the word we're using right now? Because
parenting.
yeah, and so just even the simplicity of language we use, right, with regards to those things, and just thinking even to ourselves, right? So the question is, do we transform, right? How we even just speak about those things, right? And so how we speak life into the inequity, right? We speak life into the double standards every time we say, okay, like he watched the kids. Okay, well, like I hope somebody did, right? So it's like that whole thing. So really just kind of on a daily basis, like analyzing even our own language. So even if we don't necessarily agree with this being the current state of affairs or the double standards, are we just even subconsciously, like, the comment said, that it's this generationally inherited thing, still reinforcing all of that by just the way that we even speak about these topics, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like it's hard, but we have to start, like tweaking that in little ways. And I mean, we do here, and just talk about it differently, And I've talked to my friends about it too, when they'll talk about, oh, my husband is, like babysitting or what, oh, they're just parenting, and just like kind of going, hey, let's look at this a different way a little bit.
For sure. For sure. We had another comment that plays right into this from Wally, which I'm going to out Wally. Wally is Darren, by the way, if you guys don't know that.
Hi, Darren.
Darren is my husband, and also works with Inclusive Agile. So when I say, he's been a stay-at-home dad, he was a single dad for a while. His boys were babies. He was taking care of them as infants alone. This comment, at-home dads are treated like they're incapable of performing household duties. And gender norms hurt everyone when they don't reflect reality. Gender norms, the idea, patriarchy, it doesn't just hurt women. It hurts everyone. It hurts men. It hurts men, even if they think they're falling into that gender norm, it is still affecting your ability to show up in the world. What other thoughts do you guys have on that?
We get comments a lot since my husband is a stay-at-home dad, and we get comments like, "Oh, but does he do the laundry?" I'm like, "I see a child.
That's my little guy.
I love it." We get that where it's like, "Oh, who does but then who does the laundry?" And I'm like, "My husband." It's like who dad why does it matter? And I get comments a lot when people don't know that my husband's a stay-at-home dad, where I say something like, "Oh, cooking dinner, blah blah blah." I had something happen not too long ago on LinkedIn where someone was like, "Wow, that is just traditional gender norms, blah 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 blah." And I commented, "Well, I work, my husband does it, and I happen to like making dinner, so maybe it has to do with what we enjoy doing. That's different." There's just such a, I don't know, we get it a lot where when people find out he's a stay-at-home, they're like, "Oh my God, that's so great. That's just so great." But if I said I'm a stay-at-home mom, would anyone go, "Oh my God, that's just so..."
No.
Never.
No.
Never. Not in a million years.
Sorry, I'm going to.
Not in a million years. If I'm I'm the one that takes out the trash, it's like, "Well, what does your husband do?" I'm like, "I don't know, everything else that's every day." And I just take it's, there's this norm of, are you doing things that are within traditional roles for your gender versus are you splitting up the household duties in a way that makes sense for your family? Exactly. And so I think that that's a big thing that we deal with. It's like, "Oh, who's babysitting your kid when you're gone?" I'm like, "My husband is a stay-at-home dad and he's doing at-home preschool with her," or he's bringing, and it blows people's minds. They're like, "Oh my God, he's just the sweetest person, the greatest, blah, 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 blah." And I'm like, I mean, we balance things different. I like to work, he doesn't like to work. And we just talked the other day, we enjoy that split. So there's just this total misconception of what's okay and what's not okay. And I feel it all the time. I feel like my work is dismissed because it's like, "Oh, you work. Oh my God, you just work," but your husband stays with the kids. I'm like, what if it was the opposite? If he worked and I feel would it be "Oh my God, your wife stays home with the kids and you work? Oh my God." There would be no.
It wouldn't. Yeah, no.
It's something
it's awful.
It's I have enough privilege that one of us works and the other one doesn't. For me, that's the thing, is we have privilege to be able to do that. But there's definitely people, you can see it in people's faces when you say it.
Yeah.
When you say, "What is your husband?"
There's also there's also an interesting discussion
No, please.
In the NICU community, because very often a lot of it is a result of traumatic birth, right? And so what you have is a situation where my husband was the first person to meet our child. He was the one that was awake and conscious and got the welcome packet and did all of that. And they knew him. I remember even weeks later, the nurses being like, "Oh wow, we haven't met you, that crazy man who's walking around with a beard yelling at everybody, we know him." And so there was this moment, and there's a lot of discussion, I've heard it from a lot of NICU parents, that the dads get forgotten a lot, but in that situation, they tend to be the one that has to actually take that early role on, because sometimes mom's not conscious, sometimes mom's not well, right? All of the different things. And so it's an interesting dynamic always when you speak to that community, because they're saying, "No, hi, let's talk about this person that's I remember my husband running from one floor to the other, from the recovery to the NICU, just being like, okay, I'm going to be with you. Oh, wait, I have to go back to her. And that whole thing. Right. And so like, even in that very early stage, that central default parent actually became him. And that's very true for a lot of families who've dealt with that situation. Right. And so, like you said, Shiva, this is what works for you guys. And I think that's the whole thing. Like, let's stop judging what
Mhm.
works for other people. Like, just,
Thank you.
let's just, live in your own
Thank you.
house and take care of what works for you. And
If it works for
yeah,
you.
and like, why does it matter what the next person is doing or not? And even these days with the judgment of a stay-at-home mom, someone's like, really? So, you got that master's and you speak all those languages just to like be home with a 3-year-old? And I'm like, yup. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because that's all I've
There
ever
is,
wanted to
like,
do.
yeah.
Right. And so just holding space for like what works for you,
We are out of
Absolutely.
time. That flew by so fast.
I know.
Thank you
It's so
guys
nice.
so thank you, humans, so much. We're trying to remove guys, but sometimes I just really like it still. I want to say guys. I'm not sure what to do in the world anymore when that's a word I like. Anyway,
Mm,
thank you, Kimberly. Thank you, Sheva. Thank you, Jenna. I want to give just
thank
just
you.
15, 20 seconds for each of you once again, Sheva and Kimberly, to talk about who you are, what you do, and how people can get in touch with you if they'd like to learn more. And let's start with Kimberly.
Okay. So yeah, you can find us. It's written right there. So alltheunexpected.com. And that is the web destination where you can get in touch with me. It's just me. So if you're writing the contact, you will actually get me directly. And so yeah, I'd love to hear from anyone and look forward to hearing from you guys.
And I'm going to give a quick plug for her documentaries on her YouTube channel. They're very cool. Very cool. Beautiful, beautiful art. We've talked a little bit about on your stuff as well. So, all right, Sheva.
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. Just shove a guy. If you follow hashtag Dr. Back Guy, I'm there. I'm not selling anything. I'm just posting what I feel like. So take it or leave it. But Chris, I so appreciate you having me for this panel. This is so much fun.
Yeah, thank you all. This is like one of those things in my life that like I think just it's kind of healing, right, for us to be able to just talk and bring these things up. So
Definitely.
very meaningful for me as well. So all right, thank you all. And we'll be back next week with Sheva. We'll do a one-on-one talk with Sheva, some deeper dives into some research. And then the next week after that, we'll talk with Kimberly. So last week of May, we'll have a longer, and we'll get to see some clips from your documentaries as well, right? So exciting month. Okay, thank you all. Till next time.
Thank you.